pass it. Oh, thank you, Sade. I was supposed to tell you that. You're amazing. I'm going to then pass it off, is my understanding, to Paula for the administrative start. And then I think our understanding is that the art team will help us guide us through kind of the new structure or process. Obviously, anybody feel free to jump in to correct me if I'm misunderstanding the agenda.
Thanks, Grace. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please note that this will be recorded, and we'll just jump right in. So today, the Arts Commission Committee for Anti-Racism, Equity, and Metro Arts staff are joining by conference call. In a moment, we will call roll of members present. Again, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public no later than 48 hours after the meeting. Any action items voted on today's meeting will be reconfirmed at the next in-person meeting of the commission. So I will need to call roll. So for each committee member, I'll call your name and please just say whether or not you're present. Alandis?
Present.
Ellen?
Present.
John Royal?
Present.
Jonathan Marks?
Present.
Megan?
Present.
Will? Will Cheek? Will, I think you're saying something, but I can't hear you.
I can't get to the screen.
Okay, but you're present.
I'm here.
Okay. So now I'll need a motion. Thank you all for saying that you're present. Now I'll need a motion that this meeting agenda constitutes essential business of this body, and meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak and is permitted under Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16.
I'm so sorry, Paul. Before you continue, Aaron is calling in, but he is present.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Also, did you record Megan as being present? I heard that. Okay.
Yes, I didn't know about Aaron. Thank you for that, Grace. Okay, I'll need a motion that this meeting constitutes essential business of this body.
So moved.
And then I'll need a, who was that? If you'll say your name, please.
Will Cheek.
Thank you. I'll need a second.
Megan Kelly, I second that.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, if anyone has comments on this motion, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, we'll need to do a roll call vote. And I'm gonna go through it if you'll say whether you yay or nay on this motion. Alandis?
Yay.
Ellen?
Yay.
John Royal?
Yay.
Jonathan Marks?
Yay.
Megan Kelly?
Yay.
Will Cheek?
Yay.
Aaron?
Yay.
Thank you. Okay, so that passes, and so now I am turning it over to the working group, who compromises of, it's Alandis, Will, Trey, and Janine.
Great, thank you, Paula. This is Janine. We worked obviously remotely and via email just to codify the processes. I'm actually going to hand it to Alandis, who made the most recent updates, and I believe we're all in agreement now.
All right. The first kind of change is it's calling it maybe like the CARE meeting norms, just kind of as an official name. I know Roberta's rules of orders was floating around, but just kind of to change it to something that we would officially use. I think that's something that should be there. The other changes that were made. First, the Arts Commission co-chair would facilitate a call to order, facilitate the executive order, the roll call, and any closing. And then, other than that, just kind of like what happened, there would be one facilitator from the art, or from the art team, or one facilitator designated to facilitate the discussion throughout the rest of the meeting, based on the agenda. CARES, the group is governed by consensus. If we need a roll call, and most of these things were recorded by Will. If we need a roll call on major action items, the co-chair, can call for that and ask for that, so that can be confirmed for the record. The agenda will be formulated by consensus. Anybody can suggest something for the agenda. They'll be finalized by the staff and approved by the co-chair, and we'll maintain our breakout sessions and caucuses. So caucuses, working groups, and just to be clear, caucuses and working groups are different things, right? But we would maintain these breakout sessions, and that's pretty much how we get our work done. Anything else I left out from the working group, please chime in. Or any other comments from the group in general.
Hey, Paul, this is Will. Are you comfortable with the way this is set out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure because we haven't talked about it.
No, it's fine. And if it needs tweaking, we tweak it.
All right, Alice, thanks for taking the lead on the revisions. This looks good.
Thank you for circulating everything. So yeah, if there's nothing else, again, this is working. If we need to revise it, we can. This is something that's working, something that's living and breathing just like everything else we do. So if there isn't anything else, I'll turn it over to the next agenda item.
Well, let me just say, we're looking at consensus. I don't think we need a vote on this, but I just want to make sure that there is a consensus out there that this is a good way for the work to flow when we're meeting.
So do we have consensus as far as moving forward with these norms?
Right here.
Good here.
Yeah, I'm in support. I don't know if I can't vote, but I think it's going in the right direction.
To Trey's point, I kind of think that consensus should probably be inclusive of the staff as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for things like this where there's no roll call. Yeah, for sure.
I agree with that.
I support that idea as well.
So do I.
As do I.
Fine with me too.
I think one question I would have about that is, are there specific staff members that will kind of regularly be a part of that, or like if Caroline drops in for a meeting, is she going to be included in that as well, or kind of what are the parameters around that?
This is Janine. So my colleagues can jump in, but it's my understanding that Trey, Grace, and myself are the CARE staff members, and then there might be other invited guests from the staff who come in as needed, to comment on something specific, and to give, just other context. But we've been charged with the staffing of CARE.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. So if there aren't any other comments, I guess we can circulate these, to the full group. But yeah, I'll turn this over to the next agenda item.
So that would be John and Ellen.
Thank you. Ellen and I worked through the priorities document that everybody had contributed to, and we have synthesized some things. So let's go to the first. But actually, before we go to the first slide, before we get to this slide, I want to say that multiple members of the team have talked about COVID-19, and I did not, when we worked through this document, we didn't put those concerns in here, but I just wanted to acknowledge that several people had concerns about how this body would function during COVID-19, as far as where that takes us with our equity lens and how we apply it. So I do want to say that. And now let's jump into the first slide. Uh-oh, what happened?
Apologies, we're doing
Nope.
multiple screens.
No sweat.
Okay, here we go.
I know how it is. So the first thing that was expressed that was coming through was this idea of an analysis. The fact that the care has been, the establishment of this team has happened at a point of real transition, and we have multiple people. When we started working with this body in November of 2017, we've had multiple people come, go with the art team, and we realized that everyone doesn't have the same, may not be functioning with the same analysis, and that we might need to all get on the same page. So that we can success looks like, and it just when we apply the analysis and define any risks or barriers for maintaining / pushing that analysis. So every section that we have here, we've also come up with action steps that have been distilled by the responses from committee members. And so let's go to those first action steps for analysis. Next slide, yeah. So the very first way to get at this is training. And we wanted to look at, talked about some of these before, establishing it as part of being appointed a commissioner, and working that into the bylaws. Also, the idea that we can develop trainings, and we there again know that COVID is a real thing, and our access to Crossroads may be limited, but developing trainings for staff and board members who have not attended, it's a typo, the cross trainings, and especially staff members who are now supporting the care team. So that would be Grace, Janine, Trey. And then also, this is one thing that we talked about, supplemental informational sessions should be a part of every care meeting going forward. So that might mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that supplemental information looks like. It might be a presentation of an article, a small video, a recommendation that we all are a part of between meetings. But that's the way that we want to get at that. Next slide, please. So we looked at this idea, and I think that it has already been addressed, this idea of how we'll vote, how we'll make decisions. But the biggest thing, discussing interaction and process between the care team, and this also includes the staff and the Board of Commissioners. And just that's what came through as we analyzed the priorities. And this idea that caucusing should be encouraged and continued, but what does it actually look like in this format? And can we design new ways to caucus? There actually in the People of Color Caucus, we have an idea on how we move forward on this, but I wouldn't feel comfortable without bringing it to the other caucus first. So we can stick a pin in that and possibly talk about that, but I'd still like a little more time to work that out. Can we go to the, please? So also there was a real desire to reach out in the community and to essentially communicate to the public at large and the rest of the stakeholders exactly what this body does and what our function is within the institution of Metro Arts. So encourage the development of policies and practices that drive equity in Nashville. CARE's role could involve working with staff and board to research approaches, policies, and practices in other communities, as well as identifying equitable policies and practices within the Nashville arts ecosystem. And then to examine ways in which we can coordinate or alliances with other departments and organizations to advocate for equity and find new ways through or into solutions during this time, and be conscious that anti-racist work is intersectional and engages a variety of issues and communities along with the arts. And I don't know, I think that is sometimes the danger with stating that you're stating anti-racism, not understanding that systems of marginalization are interconnected and interdependent. And that's something that comes through in the training, and find ways to reestablish relationships and build trust with people and organizations of color, particularly multiple members of the community, listed that as a priority. Next slide, please. So, like I said, reaching out to public, developing a public publicity communications plan to inform the public about CARE and our racial equity work. To focus on community stakeholder engagement, telling the public we exist and creating space through a public forum section in our meetings, or to hear the public's voice opinions on racial equity in Metro Arts. There's been a lot of energy around building bridges, but also just bridges of information. Establish a program, possibly with volunteer lawyers for the arts, to help arts groups obtain 501c3 status to qualify for funding. And also I want to put in, it didn't make it to the slide, also finding a way to fund those efforts. Funding, like, so if we're going to support organizations and they agree to it, and there's time, effort, just making sure that organizations are still adequately compensated or can compensate any employees who might need to go through requisite trainings. And then just all in the hopes of building a better mechanism to learn and access community needs in regards to equity. Next slide, please. So just within the organization itself, to build on the work and research that has already been done, and then we will continue to do in order to determine actionable ways to implement the work of anti-transformation fully into the priorities of the organization. So this may include how programming is developed, how onboarding and continued growth happens within the institution, and ways in which CARE can support staff and commissioners. Next slide, please. So these are the institutional action steps, working with Metro staff, board, and other committees to review grant and public art practices, policies to ensure that more underinvested and underrepresented communities can compete equitably for artistic commissions, grants, and other financial investments. There is a lot of energy within the document around grants and how that process happens. I didn't list all of them here. We just tried to synthesize as many as we could. Establish a policy for Metro Arts search committees to require people of color and implicit bias training. And I think that that's for everyone across the board. And just a full deep dive of metrics to include up-to-date data on demographic breakdown of fund allocation and successful grant awards. the review of all Metro Nashville Arts Commission programs to assess impact on equity goals and recommend changes to the programs to better serve equity goals. And just there again, this idea, if we're going to take this deep dive, creating a reservoir of information or a database of metrics that can be queried at the discretion of the committee, and to be able to find what in compliance looks like. We touched on this a lot in our last meeting, but when scrutinizing community impact of Metro Arts policies and practices through an anti-racism and equity lens at the macro, micro level, and creating a metric that defines our success. And I think that is the last slide. I didn't put a conclusion in from what we had worked up. Yeah, thank you, Grace. Before we, or does anyone have any questions, concerns, anything that they'd like to bring up? There again, we tried to synthesize the document and give and allow for redundancy, and just to present the information. So.
I think it looks fantastic.
Grace, will you add this to the database, to our folder?
Absolutely.
And then, John, what were the overarching? I know it was communication. What are the overarching?
Trying to work on it. I'm trying to work with a trajectory. So looking at analysis first, and then going from analysis to training to support that analysis, and then looking at just committee health. It's something that we talked about in our training called Team Life. So how basically we function as a body just within our circle of care. That means commissioners, former art team, and staff. Then go community outreach. After that, community outreach, including strategies for communication, and then looking at the institutional approach. And what we did not do is we didn't want to break it up between exactly how we relate, how care relates to staff, how care relates to the board. We just really wanted to look at that institutional umbrella as a whole. So those are the 5. Sorry.
No, that's good. So I'm thinking ideally we would start with the analysis part and then transition down to the institutional approach, or all these simultaneously?
Start with the analysis first. The analysis, we have to be on the same page. Just to be able to agree that what we're talking about is what we're talking about. So when I say equity, the same person, even if myself and another committee member or a board member don't necessarily agree, we at least have an understanding of what we're actually talking about.
Well, thank you. It's great.
This is Aaron. I have a question. Is there, and I apologize if I missed this, but is there room for kind of a look into the internal operations of the organization? Like, we had some questions about staff and kind of what the relationship between some of the staff and management was, and how all of that was, just the complications of all of that within the last year. Is there room for that within these priorities?
I think so, Aaron. I apologize, when Ellen and I looked over these, we may not have added. So you mean just as being able to review relationships that happen within the organization, not necessarily us working with staff and us working with staff directly. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, that's right. So like when we were kind of reviewing any progress from the report or things that were happening, one of the suggestions was kind of incorporating some sort of restorative justice program to help resolve conflicts in a more equitable way, and just something along those lines. You know, it may or may not be that particular thing, but just something along those lines.
I there is room for that, but I did not put that into the presentation. So thank you very much. We definitely, I think that this body can serve in that way. Definitely. So.
Following up on Aaron's question, this is for staff. So Janine, Trey, Grace, how do you resolve conflict in the office currently? Or is there even a process?
I'll jump in first, I guess, because it's we certainly not with a restorative practice. Restorative practices are not in place currently as a practice for conflict or discipline. Although I think elements might inspire some, conversations, but it's definitely not operationalized. I mean, I think we handle things we have our departmental guidelines, and those are based on the civil service guidelines. And so I think that's basically the process that we follow pretty much to a T. Grace, Trey, do you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, I don't have anything much different. I haven't been involved in too much serious conflict, but I have seen, the situation where someone gets, written up and, kind of but it doesn't seem like on my end, if I have kind of a conflict, there's no, map of, how to address that. It's kind of a, based on the situation, kind of figure it out. I mean, I guess it's good that I haven't experienced that to a strong, huge conflict or something like that. But at the same time, I wonder if there would be more conflict if maybe, there were things that we could push back on that, but yeah, the short answer is I don't think we have a standard, typical process of dealing with conflict.
This is Megan Kelly. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to pass along a request from Sarah, about changing to panelists. She's muted and she may have something to say. Also, a question I have for staff is, if you all can reflect back to me, what I think I'm hearing is that it seems like there is a very top-down conflict resolution. There's a way for issues to be brought to you, but there's not necessarily a way for you all to bring issues up. Is that accurate or is that inaccurate?
So the process is so if you can go, there's not a back and forth, I'll say that. So the current process allows for limited dialogue, and it's certainly not like a kind of like a conferencing circular nature, so nothing based on restorative practices. So you can take a conflict up, and then it's sort of managed and discussed in a limited way with the person who brings it up, and then mostly in a kind of like a management level. And then decisions are presented back, or findings, are presented back, and there is an opportunity to respond, but the actual impact, I would say, is limited. That's my observation and analysis of the current kind of conflict workflow chart. Yeah, and I invite my other colleagues to jump in, but that's been my observation. So it's not necessarily top down. If there is a conflict, it does, it flows through some sort of process with a little bit of flow back for comment from the person that brings up any issues, or maybe has transgressed against any department code. So that's typical as of right now. Any other questions about that? Yeah.
I think that's about right. I think just to piggyback off what Janine said, for the processes are more formal coming from the top down. So if it's not okay, if I have something that I want to bring up and take to leadership, it's not that I can't do it. It's not that it's like, oh, do not say anything. It's more of a, okay, well, how do I do it? I don't know how. I don't know if, do I write something? Do I submit it to this person? It's more of a kind of, okay, you feel it out, maybe talk to somebody. Whereas, top down, when it comes to like discipline stuff, it's like a clear, okay, this person's going through this process. We've recorded this. This is on record. Kind of, it truly has that kind of formal process and resolution at the end.
Thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's the example that I gave for sure. I don't want to limit that necessarily just to conflict management and resolution. I think there's an opportunity to look at how decisions are made, and if there's a way to kind of make that a little bit more equitable. As an alumni of Learning Lab, which is one of the programs that MetroArts does, I think there's a lot of opportunity for MetroArts to practice what they preach, even within that program, about kind of spreading the decision-making process around and ways to do that. Like, that's what that whole training is about, and I think there's an opportunity to be able to kind of incorporate some of that into the inner workings of MetroArts as well.
Yeah, I do want to add one more thing, and I appreciate that, Aaron. Thanks so much. I think this, will all come after, the analysis and everything. But I do want to bring up how the policies in place, kind of beyond conflict, but to address any claims of harm, or in the community, and with it, within staff, within the community, just within our relationships that we've built over the years. And how does that happen? I know there are processes that have been employed in different communities and different institutions, and I think that would be something that would be wonderful for CARE to work on, and those policies in general of how do we address conflict, how do we address harm, how do we address decision making and power sharing would be great.
Megan, yeah, thank you all for that. That's super helpful, and I also agree. I think it would be really good to look at ways to make the decisions a little bit more equitable, especially I think as we're looking to see how decisions are made and how to be able to have equitable practice around discussion. So thank you all very much. That was helpful.
I just want to thank y'all for the incredible work that y'all did, John and Ellen, right? Just on pulling this together. I think it's just so helpful and clarifying, and it provides a clear roadmap for the work we're doing. I guess one question I would ask is, kind of following up to what Paula said, is that there's kind of an entry point into this based on kind of the way you presented it. It's like, we need to start here. Is there a point where you think some of this work could be synchronous? Or I guess I would raise this as a question, like, there's some things we want to make sure we're prioritizing, that we want to start at a certain place, but there's a point at which ideally some of these things can happen synchronously and not necessarily all purely in sequence, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, things can happen simultaneously, or yeah, that's fine. It's not exactly a straight on trajectory. I just wanted to, in order to present the information, we wanted to look at, where do we start? Where do we want to get where do we want to get first that we can effectively do it? I cannot emphasize enough, we don't have a shared analysis. We're going to end up undoing our best efforts later on down the road. So
totally with that.
Any other comments on this? It seems, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, if not, I'm happy to yield to the next agenda item.
Should we build consensus on this, or you guys think we need to vote because it is a major kind of direction that we're kind of going in?
I don't know that, I mean, are we voting on or as a statement that these are what we want to prioritize? Are we voting on action steps individually? What exactly would the vote entail?
You mentioned that there are 5 overarching pieces, and I kind of think that those are the 5 goals, and now the specifics in that, those can be kind of prioritized differently or rearranged, but I kind of think that the 5 with us starting at analysis begins kind of this journey.
Okay. I'm in support of that.
Me too.
Okay, thank you. So the 5 overarching goals are analysis, training, committee health, community outreach, and then institutional approaches. Is that right, John?
That's correct.
Okay, so I will need we can either do consensus or vote, whichever one you guys want to do, but just that these are the 5 things that we're going to commit to going forward.
This is Megan. I think it's, sorry, that's a weird sound. This is Megan. I think that it's also important to note that these are living documents too, that I fully expect us to revisit and kind of shift as we need to. So I do want to make a note of that in our decision making.
Hey, this is Terry. In light of what Megan just said, I agree that consensus is probably the best route for living documents, information that we're working with. So I'm good with that.
I guess I'll go out and say that I support the 5 goals, and I don't know if we're just kind of going down the list, or is that kind of the consensus model as well?
I think if we were in person, we could kind of like see people nodding and do that kind of thing. But I also support the 5 goals, and I'm excited to kind of see us moving forward.
Same here. Is there any dissent at all? Okay. All right.
A better way. Thanks, Alandis.
That's where my head was at too. Yes.
Feeling good about this. This is Megan. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Janine. I support this.
This is Aaron. I do too.
This is Grace, and for the record, incredibly excited about this and definitely supportive.
Okay, well, it looks like we kind of know our direction going forward. John, you mentioned having supplemental info on our agenda.
Yes.
What does that look like? Or what do you vision?
It the way that it was discussed, it looks like a small presentation that would total maybe 10 to 15 minutes of just a piece that touches on equity that happens in the world, that we could debate about it, we could talk about it, we could or maybe there again, like I said, maybe there is reading that we do from one meeting to the next. And we're talking about a way to not only just to supplement training, but there again, to get us all on the same page as far as equity was concerned. So that's what it looks like. 10 to 15 minutes, an article, a video, a discussion topic. That's it.
This is Megan. I also want to add to that also allows us to stay current with issues affecting our actual environment and culture right now. If we have the ability to drop something in that is coming up either within the group or something that we're responding to externally, it gives kind of a place for that feedback and that conversation and that group life.
Well stated.
Yeah, I think I'm excited about this because I think this will help us kind of all continue to stay connected and, like you all said, stay current to what's happening. There's so many resources out there that we can watch, read, listen to. So I like that.
So Grace, will you add that to our agenda for our next meeting? And we'll kind of figure out what we're going to do between now and then. But just make sure that that's an agenda item, please.
Absolutely. Just so I understand, would it be something that was designated to a particular person, or is that something that can be decided throughout the month?
On me like that. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, we can provide suggestions like we did for the agenda, and kind of go from there. John, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
You said exactly. Yeah, same.
Fantastic. And this is such a nitpicky thing. Would you like it at the beginning or the end of the agenda?
I personally think it should be beginning. That's me. But yeah, that's just my thought on it.
This is Terry, I agree with that. I just want to get some mind work done before we start into the work.
Wonderful. We'll add that first thing.
I have a request, Grace, or somebody can share out the slide deck that was shared. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, after this meeting, I'll put it up to the SharePoint and reshare that link, as well as the working processes document. And if there's anything else, let me know.
So our next agenda item was to call for discussions to check in on additional points of discussion. Is there anything else we need to discuss today?
I would argue that the documents, both documents we've been looking at, provide kind of a good roadmap for our next steps. And one way that we could approach this would be to start there, right? What do folks think about that? I know one question has been too, just around the idea of having representation from the art team kind of serve in that kind of co-facilitation role with this group. But I don't know that we've reached kind of clarity around B yet, right?
We have not talked about that. I mean, we've talked about it, but we haven't really honed in on anything. What are you guys thinking?
This is, excuse me, this is Terry. Jonathan, I'm not sure I understood your statement. Are we talking about the leadership question? Because I thought we kind of dug into that last meeting,
Okay.
in between meeting, with the understanding that the commissioners are the co-chairs, and then that's where we ended up with the facilitator for the meetings.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something explicit about the art team co-chair.
Well, there was just mention of that. I think it was in the, I mean, it was, I can't remember quite where it was in the slides, but there was the notion that, and maybe that's a revolving thing. And I guess that's one thing I just wasn't really clear about, but it occurs to me that just having really good lines of communication there are gonna help us going forward, right? And does that need to have a formalized piece vis-a-vis the art team, or is that something that is kind of collectively organized on the part of the art team?
I'm still not sure I'm following on the
Did you
communication.
want to have a person from the art team who is a representative, who is essentially working? I guess that's the thing. I'm not sure if I understand either, like in terms of the idea that we have folks from the art team who represent the community who are participating and helping to sort of design and facilitate the work on an ongoing basis, right? Not just within the context of the meeting, but between meetings, and really sort of with that process of driving agendas and determining what next steps are. Between meetings, how is that working, or is that all sort of being contained just within the meetings? I don't know. I'm just sort of raising the question.
Okay, but now I understand. I was just missing pieces of it. So I don't have a particular, well, I guess I do have a particular opinion. Initially, I would think the art team could discuss what that might look like. And then if it needs to be formalized within the committee itself, it could be presented in that way. But I'm just suggesting that's a possible method.
Yeah, I'm good with that. So maybe we as members of the art team can kind of have a side conversation about that, and then have a recommendation to the committee.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
What do others think about that process?
I support that.
I do too. Sorry.
Yep, this is Aaron. I do too.
Unmute.
Alandis, did we hear from you?
Yep, I support that.
Okay. And is Ellen on the call? Okay.
She jumped off.
Okay. All right. I think
Megan, I support as well.
Thank you, Megan. I knew I was seeing someone else. Okay, I think we have consensus around that operational process for now. Thank you, John, for raising that. Jonathan, sorry.
Any other discussion points that we need to clarify, or would anybody have any questions?
I have a request. This is Terry. Going back to staff and intra-departmental relationship, just to, and this, Grace, this is in addition to, I've requested some data from you, so I'm adding this point to that list. I think it would be helpful to get an idea of what the official processes are. If we could get copies of whatever HR documents are used to help manage that, from employee handbook to whatever other policies there may be, whether they're specific to Metro or whether Metro operates under specific to Metro Arts. and whether there are specific policies that Metro Arts operates under Metro government.
Yes, I can absolutely add that to the list. And just to update Terry and the committee, I will share out that list of information that Terry requested. I think it's incredibly helpful. And we're hoping to get that completed this month in time for committee review. But I will add this to the list certainly, and this may be something that I can get to y'all a little bit quicker since we already have the more sending the handbook and the processes.
Okay, thank you. And one more request, Janine, if your idea of restorative processes from since you're inside, from your perspective, what would that look like? Just to get an idea of how you're thinking of it, or the three of you actually, the staff. What does that mean to you?
Sure. I mean, so I think thinking of it first as establishing both sides or multiple sides, whoever's involved, impacted, being able to share their perspective and that perspective being honored. And then, so after that kind of honesty and dialogue, initial dialogue happens, folks would take accountability for or acknowledge harm that's caused, and then take accountability for that harm, and then work to repair the harm in some way that's agreeable to all involved. That's like the very basic. I don't have like the restorative. I can definitely share, different, more specific like restorative practices charts. And John, you can share that as well. You're definitely in the work within our institution and out in the community. And I think just incorporating those processes, I think, be just so beneficial. And we say we believe them, so I think just incorporating them, not just in one small facet in the community, but throughout the institution would be really impactful.
And I also would love, like, if there's your perspective on any of the staff as you all are thinking, if you feel comfortable emailing that to the team or putting that together, or if you have practices you see that you like and that I think would work well. Any of that stuff I think would be really good. I think it's very important for us as we're taking apart walls to make sure nobody gets hit with bricks in the process. So we definitely want to make sure that you all feel protected within what can be difficult conversations.
I agree, and especially now as we're working on a framework for the committee, with all that's going on in the world around us, and with you all inside doing the work that we are taking a new view of, I think you all need to feel as protected and as advocated for as those that we are working to serve out in the community, because you're doing the work. And I think that's extraordinarily important. Thank you for entertaining my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie, thank you for that as well. Any other points of discussion or things that we need to? So I have the next thing on our agenda is setting our next meeting date. 7:30 is early, you guys, but I'm here for it. Jesus, it was rough. And I just had to come from upstairs to downstairs, but.
I appreciate the super early hour. I will have more flexibility moving forward in the future, but I am here for what we need as well.
Oh, this is Terry. It's really early for me too, and it's busier part of my workday, and I'm concerned with Ellen because she deals with Metro Schools. It's going to chomp into her availability. So I'm willing to work with it, but I'm hoping we can get back to our afternoon session time.
Yeah,
does it make sense?
Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
So does it make sense to just go back to our Wednesday at 4:30, or was it 4:30 option?
This is John. It does. I was unavailable. I was just unavailable this afternoon. This is. I mean, our team knows normally I'm gone for 7 weeks or 8. I'm gone for 2 months out of. So I'm working with West Coast time because we're doing something remotely right now. But other than that, yeah, no, I'm good to restore back the 4 o'clock, 4:30. Yeah, I'm good.
Same.
Megan, does that work for you?
That actually works really, really well right now. So
Okay. It works for me too. It would be better for me, I think.
And I've got to say this as well, on August 26th, if we were to resume that time, I am at the CNM training, if it's going to actually happen, for the systematic racism. So I wouldn't be able to do 4 o'clock, I don't believe.
Well, technically, this is our August meeting, so we would be looking at September, right? The first weekend in September, or the first week in September, I should say. The first Wednesday?
September 2nd.
Yes.
And I'm good on that date.
If we are reaching consensus on this date, and I don't want to expedite this too quickly, but I would just like for us to hold the question that follows, which is, what are we doing between now and then, right? We don't want to be in a period of stasis. And so maybe the next part of the conversation is, how do we move into the next month to keep this work going forward?
Great question, Jonathan, and that was going to kind of be how I caveat what's on the agenda for that September meeting, so we can make sure we're getting everything done.
I have some questions as far as that's concerned. Just in what we've looked at in the priorities, just like seeing a path forward, taking a path forward with some of the action steps would be good. Or if we to develop groups where we could come up with plans to, I'm all for starting in just developing these relationships between board, staff, and the committee in this new iteration. So that's one example.
And I would add to that the notion that it makes more sense to me for that work to be happening, right, over these next few weeks, and that the agenda setting happens closer to the date of the meeting when we have a better understanding of where we have arrived in the work we're doing.
So this is, again, I think we talked about supplemental information. Perhaps it would be good for each of us to find something that we think would be worth kind of talking about over the next couple of meetings, and maybe going ahead and building a list of that so that we get a little bit of kind of everybody's voices and everybody's backgrounds about where they're coming from, and also what they feel is important for us to kind of reach a shared analysis on. Does that sound okay to people?
Yes.
Yes.
Also, like I said, like I alluded to earlier, there is a caucus design plan that we've talked about, but we haven't shared with the whole team. Only the People of Color Caucus, we've talked about it. So if we could finalize that, that's something else that we can work on within the month.
Yeah,
I
I think
second
that's a
that
good
would be a
idea.
really my microphone. I second that would be a really good thing for us to do as an art team, to go ahead and determine what that's going to look like and bring that back.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you, Megan. Yep, I agree.
Will we also have the opportunity to start some of the analysis? Like I know Terry has asked for some information. Do we need to start thinking about maybe a sub-team that can start looking at that and start kind of to compile some information based on that?
This is Megan. I would be in on working on kind of those restorative practices and starting to look at different options or different strategies to move forward.
Same here. Same.
Yeah, this is Aaron. I'm happy to be a part of that too.
So this is Terry, I'm sorry, just ran over someone. Grace, that's going to depend on what you have available to share out with us from the things that I've asked for.
Yes, so we are, two of the things you had asked for, one was related to any demographic information we might have, and the other was to the results of our, the survey that we did in May. And our fantastic intern, Layla Haynar, she's working on basically de-identifying the survey results so we can share those out. So hopefully we'll have that to you soon. And then Janine, Trey, and I are coordinating on compiling the list of internal and external programs and initiatives. So hopefully we can have that to y'all soon. But I'll talk with Trey and Janine about maybe just having a working document on SharePoint. So as we're able, you can kind of see where we are in that process, instead of waiting for the whole complete package.
So this is Megan, and thinking about creating, restorative practice suggestions. Is there anyone from staff who would want to be part of that conversation? I'm very hesitant to have a conversation without people at the table who are going to be affected by it.
Yeah, I can join you in that conversation. This is Trey speaking.
I'd like to be part of that too. This is Terry.
And is this something, I know Janine, Trey, and I are technically the dedicated staff members, but would this be something that y'all would have interest in inviting Nicole Robinson, who's our restorative justice coordinator? I'm in the process of learning as much as I can from her. So I don't know if she would have particular insight if y'all were talking about restorative practices.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion, Grace. This is Janine. Nicole is wonderful, and she's also brought in some really great facilitators and trainers lately. So she has not only lots of knowledge herself, but connections with lots of other resources.
Awesome. I would be down for that.
Yes, I'm good with that. Thank you.
I will say, having offered her name up, I will have to check on her capacity.
That's the only reason I didn't say it, because I was like, I don't know if I want to volunteer her like that. But yeah.
Yeah, contingent upon her ability and capacity. She is flying and tearing these days, so.
Are there any other marching orders that we need to discuss?
The only thing I wanted to share out in terms of agenda making closer to the meeting, and I feel like this isn't something that I have expressed adequately. In addition to helping guide the work of the committee, the agenda is also helpful in sharing with the public sort of what is upcoming with the committee. And as we move into hopefully having a public comment process built into the committee, it might just be helpful to have some lead times that I can get that out on Nashville.gov or other places that y'all might suggest so that it's accessible.
Grace, when do you have to turn in for public?
I agree with her.
When do you have to turn it in?
The agenda is a bit more flexible. I need 7 days lead time for public notice of meetings. So in terms of scheduling, I will double check our bylaws about the agenda and when that needs to be posted. I think my recollection, and it could be incorrect, so I will check on that information and send it to y'all. But I believe the regulations are in terms of sending that information to y'all to make sure you have time to prepare. But since I have a lot of follow-up documents to send y'all, I will double check that in the bylaws and add that into my email.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, let us know.
I will tell you that in practice, I have noticed that sometimes agendas for Arts Commission meetings don't go up until like a couple of days before. So that's worth.
This is Megan. I think we can try to also for that 7-day kind of notice with the idea that it would go out public notice as well as the agenda to the community, just to give community time to formulate response or be thinking through things.
And to make sure that Grace, because she's got other things to do, has a appropriate time in her workflow to be able to accommodate the changes we might have, or the schedule she has to keep.
To Terry's point, I was thinking maybe we should try to have everything to Grace 10 days before our meeting. So then that way she still has time to incorporate it and get it out within those 7 days.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. On the off chance something needs to be added or something needs to be changed, can that simply be announced at the beginning of the active meeting? So she doesn't have to, Grace, you don't have to reissue anything. If we need to change the agenda, we'll just announce it at the beginning of that meeting that these are the alterations. So it's still official.
Yes, I believe that is perfectly fine. And then what I may do on the back end is upload, something titled updated agenda, but also in normal workflow, y'all would be approving notes and minutes for me to put up post meeting.
Yeah.
For those who weren't able to attend. And then there's always the recording, which I think is helpful.
Right. Yeah. I think if that works for you, I think I see that as a good path forward.
That is a generous amount of time, and I'm very appreciative of that.
To be official, anyone have any disagreement to that? Okay. Trying to wait 7 seconds. That's the official rule.
Is there anything else we need to discuss?
Paula, thank you for leading the meeting. I want to thank everybody for, being flexible on how we do this. I know meeting virtually is difficult, in particular when we've got some real meat that we're dealing with. So I want to thank everybody. I think this is going well for a virtual meeting.
So I guess we'll find out whether or not we do September online or if we're in person.
Yes, that is currently in flux, but I will do my best to keep y'all updated. Actually, thank you for bringing that up, Paula. If y'all wouldn't mind just letting me know where y'all are in terms of what sort of safety precautions would make you feel comfortable if we do have to meet in person, or if that's something you're just not comfortable with currently, just so I have in my head. If we did meet in person, we would do our best to kind of get as big a space as possible, so that we could all have masks and hand sanitizer, and 6 feet apart. I know metro buildings are all temperature controlled, or as in they take your temperature when you come into the building. So there's a lot they're hopefully doing for those safety procedures, but I would appreciate just knowing what would make y'all feel safe, what feels comfortable. So if we do have to make that decision, we can kind of pivot quickly.
Okay. That's a fair point. We can just send you our individual kind of pieces. Okay. When do you want that by?
Mid-month is probably fine. And I will say, I mean, if y'all could let me know by the 17th, hopefully we will have more guidance by then about what will be happening. And I do understand that this is a constantly evolving situation, so next week may be fine. 3 weeks from now, maybe like I'm not leaving my house ever again. So
Yeah.
I think it's,
Okay. Got it.
I appreciate us holding space to address those concerns, because I do think that there is a big equity lens in terms of people's exposure risks and health risks, and just kind of responsibility to their community. So I very much am appreciative that we have space to actually talk through that.
absolutely, we really appreciate all of you. And the last thing we would want to do is put you in a situation where harm could come to you. At least to the best of our abilities.
Well, and to you all as staff too. We want to make sure y'all are staying safe. That's really important.
Thank you. That is very much appreciated.
Grace, this is Will. Do we have like the ability to be able to do a partial WebEx in-person meeting? So let's say half of us wanted to gather in person and half wanted to dial in. Is that a possibility?
The last time I talked with our Metro lawyer, he did not seem to think that that was legal. Everyone needed to be in person, was his understanding of that order. Potentially it's a thing where I'm happy to ask him again, or perhaps invite a guest to make sure that I understood him correctly or was communicating to him appropriately.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is, from a legal perspective, anyone who is in person would be counted as there for the meeting. Someone who's not there would just be a guest. So it wouldn't count for a quorum, for example. We don't even do a quorum. So I would think that if Paula or I were there in person, we could probably legally conduct the meeting. But check with Alex and see if that's a possibility, okay?
I certainly will.
Feel free to send him to me if he starts going wop, 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 wop with legalese, okay?
I appreciate that. I will check in with him about that, because if we can continue the work, even if it's not safe in public, that would be wonderful.
Is there any other business or items that we need to discuss? Seeing and hearing none, I believe this completes the business of this meeting. And we can go ahead and adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
I
Aye.
Okay, see you guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.